Hello, it's Monday the 4th of May 2020 and today we are starting our story of the snail and the whale. Now, I'm reading the story next and I'm going to save it on YouTube, and then I suggest you come back to it each day before we do our activity to remind your child of the story, because I'll be referring to it as we do our activity. I hope you enjoy. Bye-bye. The Snail and the Whale. Look how big that whale is. And look how little the snail is. This is the tale of a tiny snail and a great big grey-blue humpback whale. This is a rock as black as soot. This is a snail with an itchy foot. The sea snail slithered all over the rock and gazed at the sea and the ships in the dock. And as she gazed, she sniffed and sighed. The sea is deep and the world is wide. How I long to sail, said the tiny snail. These are the other snails in the flock, who all stuck tight to the smooth black rock, and said to the snail with the itchy foot, "Be quiet, don't wriggle, sit still, stay put." But the tiny sea snail sighed and sniffed, then cried, "I've got it, I'll hitch a lift." This is the trail of the tiny snail, a silvery trail that looped and curled and said, "Lift wanted around the world." This is the whale who came one night when the tide was high and the stars were bright, a humpback whale immensely long, who sung to the snail a wonderful song of shimmering ice and coral caves and shooting stars and enormous waves. This is the tale of the humpback whale. He howled it out of the starlit sea and said to the snail, "Come sail with me." This is the sea so wild and free that carried the whale and the snail on his tail to towering icebergs and far-off lands, with fiery mountains and golden sands. These are the waves that arched and crashed, that foamed and frolicked and sprayed and splashed, and the tiny snail on the tail of the whale. These are the caves beneath the waves, where stripy fish with feathery fins and sharks with hideous toothy grins swam round the whale and the snail on his tail. This is the sky so vast and high, sometimes sunny, blue and warm, and sometimes filled with a thunderstorm, with zigzag lightning, flashing and frightening the tiny snail on the tail of the whale. Oh, he's a bit scared. And she gazed at the sky and the sea and the land, the waves and the caves and the golden sand. She gazed and gazed, amazed by it all, and she said to the whale, "I feel so small." But then came the day the whale lost his way. These are the speedboats running a race, zigging and zooming all over the place, upsetting the whale with their ear-splitting roar, making him swim too close to shore. This is the tide slipping away. The tide is when the sea goes out. And this is the whale lying breeched in a bay. "Quick, off the sand, back to sea," cried the snail. "I can't move on land, I'm too big," moaned the whale. The snail felt helpless and terribly small. Then I've got it, she cried, and started to crawl. I must not fail, said the tiny snail. This is the bell on the school in the bay, ringing the children in from their play. This is the teacher holding the chalk, telling the class, sit straight, don't talk. This is the board as black as soot. And this is the snail with the itchy foot. A snail, the teacher turned pale. Look, says the children, it's leaving a trail. This is the trail of the tiny snail, a silvery trail saying, save the whale. Oh, what a clever snail. These are the children running from school, fetching the fireman and digging a pool. Squirting and spraying to keep the whale cool. What a great idea to keep the whale cool. This is the tide coming into the bay, and these are the villagers shouting hooray as the whale and the snail travelled safely away. Bye-bye. They're all waving. Back to the dock and the flock on the rock, who said, how time's flown, and haven't you grown? And the whale and the snail told their wonderful tale of shimmering ice and coral caves and shooting stars in enormous waves, and of how the snail, so small and frail, with her looping, curling, silvery trail, saved the life of the humpback whale. Then the humpback whale held out its tail, and on crawled snail after snail after snail. And they sang to the sea as they all set sail on the tail of the grey-blue humpback whale. Amazing.